Everybody, welcome to another edition of Tarter Source. I'm Steve Tarter here at the Peoria Journal-Star, and with me today, the general manager of the bus service, the public bus service in Peoria, Illinois, Peoria area, Doug Roelfs. Doug, welcome to our show.
Hi.
You've been in Peoria about a year, you mentioned.
Yep, a little over a year. Yep.
So let's ask a little bit about your background. What you're a transit guy? Have you been around transit districts in other cities?
Yeah, I've been in transit about 12 years now. It's kind of my second career.
What was the first one?
Public Works.
Oh,
so,
well, that's a tie-in there.
Yeah.
Where you said initially Iowa,
right?
Raised in Iowa.
Yeah.
So this cold spring we're having doesn't shake you.
No, I'm used to it. Yep. Yeah.
Very good. So you've been around. You've probably seen challenges and other systems, throughout the country. What strikes you about Peoria's system now that you've been here about a year?
Peoria's got a good system. I know it probably doesn't have all the service like we talked about earlier that the big cities have, 15-minute headways,
right.
a bus every 3 or 4 minutes, and the rail system. But, we do hour headways. In the peak service, we do half-hour headways. So we're trying to work on that a little bit and see if we can get some cut down to maybe some 15-minute during peak. But
now ridership, and sometimes if you don't stay up on top of this, you read something that's 2 years old and things have changed. So how is ridership nationally? Is it down a little bit? I mean, because I know gas has been an issue. Right. How are you looking at that across the nation?
Yeah, across the nation, it's dropped considerably from the high gas prices and then also interest rates on vehicles as well. I think the two tie together quite a bit. If people can afford to drive a car, they will, especially in rural America.
Right.
Ridership it's steady in. It hasn't dropped lately. We're kind of at a steady mark with a couple upticks, So
And you're talking about Peoria.
Right. Yeah.
And now, just for people who aren't aware, because I'll just say I worked at the transit district when it was GP Transit from 82 to 98, so that's a while back, 20 years ago. There's a lot of people who will always say, oh, I need to get out on a bus. They haven't been on a bus in X number of years since they were a kid or whatever the thing is. And it's understandable because, as you said, people get into a routine with the cars and people are busy and they figure, I can't waste time standing around when I need to be on my way. Well, there's many advantages to the transit. Where does CityLink go? You go to Pekin?
We've got a route to Pekin, correct. Yep. The only thing we don't have out there is weekend service, so it's a weekday thing. We do East Peoria. We've got a contract with them, go up to ICC, and then Sunnyland, if I pronounce that right.
That's right, Sunnyland. You see, you're becoming just a native right here in Peoria. So that's a pretty good area. Certainly, we see the buses downtown at the transit center. You've got, and I know we've written about this in recent years, Peoria, and I think I talked to your predecessors at the CityLink. You went through a time, I think the state had a lot to do with it, the fiscal problems of Illinois, where we had a very old fleet, but now we've really, how do you look at Peoria's fleet of buses?
Right now, we've got a pretty good fleet. Back a few years ago, they got a lot of ARA money, replaced the majority of the fleet. So now what we're trying to do is stay on top of that. We did get 4 new hybrids in the last 2 years. We've got a couple of years now where we might not get any new buses because of funding and because of the age of our fleet. I think there's 3 eligible right now out of 53.
Are you basically competing with other systems? In other words, somebody who's got 20 old buses is higher on the list than, say, maybe Peoria that only has 3?
Some of it is competition. A lot of it is we get X amount of dollars from the FTA every year. So it's just putting that money aside so that we can purchase a vehicle when we need them. So,
Doug, in your mind, what is it that will trigger someone to ride the bus? Obviously, I think most people would say, well, if you don't have a car, you just like. But I'm thinking seniors, some of the folks in the disabled community, young people. who else fits into that category?
Yeah, those are the major ones that were our target groups right now. Nationally, the younger people are starting to use bus service more because
Like somebody in Chicago or
right.
whatever city you want to name.
Yeah. They just don't want the responsibility of a car. They can use an Uber, they can use the bus or transit system in their cities, so they just feel that's better. And then a lot of them, are into walking and biking too. So
Right.
it's pretty easy to throw your bike on a bus and get where you want to go and then finish it off with your bicycle.
And I have to admit, when that was first broached, they were putting bike racks on the front of the bus. I thought, well, who's going to do that? Because, I just didn't see it. And that's turned out to be a very successful thing. I don't know what the numbers are,
Right.
but I often see when I see a bus go by, there's a bike right on there. Somebody's on that bus that will be riding that bike when they get to their stop.
I cheated the other night. I usually try and ride my bike at night, but I didn't want to go up the big hill through the cemetery. So I threw my bike on the bus, rode up to Peoria.
On the bus?
Yeah.
Yeah.
To Peoria Heights, where it was a little flatter. Finally got out, and then I could ride my bike.
Ah.
Then it was all downhill back
This
to
is
the
the
office.
manager, folks. Just do what he does. There you go. Well, that's great. So you like to ride the bike and ride the transit.
Yeah.
What do you find when you're riding, as you probably did when you were at other cities? What are you looking for when you're on that bus? Are you just a customer, or as you would, or you're a manager too? What else is going through your mind? Checking out that driver?
When I'm on the bus, I've got other people to check on the driver.
All right.
So I'm a customer.
Okay.
I just kind of keep.
You don't suddenly jump up there and go, "Hey, wait, what was that stop you just went by?"
I might make a mental note and then pass it on.
Okay.
But for the most part, I'm looking to see how the customers are reacting to the service. And there's a lot of interaction. They're like small neighborhoods on these buses.
And you tell me what your thoughts are on this, because I think everyone has to kind of discover it for themselves. But I think one of the misconceptions that I've heard over the years, and as I said, I spent 16 years at the transit district, was that people would have some kind of sense of fear on the bus. That is, I'm on a bus with strangers. I don't know who that person is across from me or by me. And, it's the fear of the unknown.
Right.
What you find when you do ride, and if you ride with any kind of regularity, is that it is a community. And chances are you're going to ride the same bus at certain times.
Right.
So you get to sort of see familiar faces. And there's talk going on there back and forth. It is a community. The driver is part of that. Depending on the individual. Some are more talkative or engaging than others, and that's fine. But it's something that you have to experience, because it's hard to convey that when you're talking to somebody who's never ridden the bus.
Yeah. Yeah, and most of the passengers are very helpful too, because I'll get on there, and if I start asking questions, they're more than happy to help me out with where I need to get off or what I need to look for. So, yeah, they're very helpful.
And that's the other thing too. People are well aware of, well, this bus tends to be right on time, or sometimes a little early, or whatever the specifics are. Right. But generally speaking, what are the problems you're facing now that you've been here a year? You've got the same problems that exist in any transit district.
Right.
What are some of the specific ones?
Yeah, I'd say probably the biggest issue we're probably facing right now is an aging maintenance facility. So we did get some funding for that. We're going to hopefully move forward.
Now, what does that mean? Because I'm familiar with your old maintenance facility. I strolled through there many a time, looking at the old buses. Will you totally redo it or build a new, or what's the plan? The
plan originally was, I think, just to level it and start from scratch. But the way our funding's coming in, we got $3.6 million a couple weeks ago. And I think we're probably just going to have to scale it back. And
what do you need to do that, the total redo?
Was about $30 million.
30?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So 3 doesn't quite cut it.
No, it's a little short.
You can put the annex on. But
yeah. So I think we're going to look at the major components that we need. The hoists that raise the buses are outdated, and the ceilings aren't high enough. So I think we'll probably tend to that first. And then we got some other money we're looking at, so put some other grants together, see what we can get together with a package. We're getting ready to hire a architect, engineer, so that way we can figure out what our options are. So,
and that's one thing that you know from your experience, but I think it's national. It's probably across the nation. When you're dealing with a transit district, it's all about grants. You're dealing with state, federal, local, all this mix of money to deliver the service that you do.
yeah,
It's quite a balancing act.
yeah, it is.
And if you're in Illinois, whoa. Go. Hey,
Yeah.
we hate to flog Illinois on every program. It's really not necessary, but it's sort of a hindrance
Yeah.
for somebody like yourself who depends on state support.
Right. Well, I will have to say that Illinois' funding for transit is a lot better than Iowa's. So,
Let's ring a bell on that
Yeah,
one. Ding, ding,
yeah,
ding. We just
yeah.
found something. Illinois is not, end of the game. And why is that?
we get 65% of our operating from the state. In Iowa, you're lucky to get, 20, 30%.
Really?
Yeah, a lot
So
of
you
it's
much more depend on federal funding there.
right.
Okay.
And then it's more competitive grants, so you have to be on top of other things in your service to get more funding. So some of the people that are kind of at the bottom of the list don't get much money and don't get much opportunity to grow. So
One of the things that I wanted to ask you, decided I would ask you when I knew you would be coming, is the bus service that we have in Peoria now involves Sundays.
Right.
That's well, I think it was added some years ago.
Yeah.
Correct. Is that working out? Do you find that is that developing? Because in my time there, we didn't run on Sundays at all, and I think it was always too expensive. But how's that working?
yeah, it's working very well.
Okay.
In fact, the people that use the Sunday service would like to see us expand hours.
I'm sure.
So yeah, there's always a need for that. So we might add a couple routes a little longer just to see. So
And is the Peoria system, when you look at now, I'm not talking about East Peoria and Pekin, those off, the other services you provide, but the basic city service, are we pretty stretched out, or is it a pretty good, in comparison to say other cities our size that you're familiar with?
yeah, it's to its limit. We were looking at that north side transfer center,
Right.
so we could cut down some of the headways out on the northwest portion of town. Because right now, if you took a bus from the transit center clear out to the cancer center, it takes you an hour and a half to get out there, and then it's another hour and a half back in. So
That's pushing.
yeah.
That's one reason why somebody will say, well, I can't. Even though you have Wi-Fi on the bus? No.
Not yet.
No.
That's
Are
one
you
of our
looking
next
at that?
projects. Yeah.
Because I was going to say that would be the one. As we just had Sam Karat from Bradley University in your seat there talking about autonomous vehicles.
Yes.
We didn't talk about autonomous buses. We'll have to get to that one, but because I don't know how that would work.
Yeah.
But we'll have to see. But no, his thing was you'd be able to do work, and I think most people would agree with this on a long commute. If you're spending an hour and a half in traffic in Chicago, New York, wherever it is, and you could just use your laptop or whatever it is, a device, you could get work done before you get to work, so to speak.
Yeah.
You could do that on the bus as well if
yeah.
you had that kind of tie-in, and might be a nice selling point. But what about that autonomous vehicles? Is that something that's alive in the industry, or I don't know how it would be, but you tell me. I mean, what are they talking about there in your transit conferences?
I think Sam had a class or a discussion on that out at Bradley like last year. And I'm like, where is this guy coming from? What is going on? And it wasn't long. I was out in D.C. to another convention, and boom, autonomous vehicles, autonomous buses. And yeah, it's closer than we think.
How would that work for a city bus? I mean, will you literally detect somebody? I mean, how do you differentiate between the person that's standing at an intersection that's going to cross the street, and it just happens to be a bus stop, and somebody who's waiting for the bus?
Right.
I mean, if they don't wave at you, what do you do?
Yeah. I haven't seen all the scenarios on it, but I did see in Atlanta they've had an autonomous vehicle running around picking people up.
Really?
And they told us if you get in front of it, it'll stop. So, of course, I had to test that.
Oh,
The guy didn't like it very much. I had to reset all the buttons to get going again, but it did stop. Yeah.
oh my goodness. Well, it might bring back conductors because then the car or the bus would be driving itself, but you'd have somebody on there to play the assist role,
Right.
Or handle the fees or whatever it would be. Yeah. Well, it's amazing how things are changing. Would you look for a bump in ridership if gas goes back up again? Has that been the tradition?
It has been. And yeah, I do think if we see a big spike in gas or interest rates, I think we could probably see some more riders. Yeah.
It's so funny to me, and again, I'm getting this right out of the Wall Street Journal, so I don't have any inside source, but the headline was the oil glut is now down to a very thin margin, something to that effect. So we don't have this huge amount in sort of just sitting by the wayside. Mm-hmm. And then at the same time, there was another article about how, and this wasn't about autonomous vehicles, but about our present, motor car industry. We're moving away from the small cars because everyone wants an SUV or a truck, a pickup truck. And I thought, well, that's going to be just great when the oil goes back up. And now the line was the Ford Fiesta. The quote was made, the Ford Fiesta is on an island by itself, and it's not going to be there much longer. And I thought, well, there we go. We're going to eliminate all the little cars, and here comes the price of gas again, going up again. Yeah. So maybe history's those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it or something. We'll find out. Yeah. In your sort of overlook, the North Side Transfer Center, what happened there? Because was there resistance to that, or is it just a matter of finding the right area?
Right. This is, I guess, before I came, they had another issue with a location. The neighborhood didn't want it. We didn't properly vet the neighborhood before we went forward. Found out there was, again, resistance for it. It wasn't an ideal location, but it was going to work.
Where was the location? So people.
It was out on Brandywine. It was a CEFQ.
Oh, yeah. Well, it used to be a money center type thing.
Yeah.
I don't even think of a neighborhood back there. I guess there is. But yeah, I always think of it as hotels and restaurants in that strip. But obviously there's houses behind there.
Correct. Yeah, we were of the same opinion you were, and we found out differently. So so right now it's kind of on the back burner. We just haven't found an ideal location. And
what about the at the mall? That tire center, wasn't that looked at one time?
Yeah, I've approached them 2 or 3 times, and
go. It's been empty for a dozen years or more.
Yeah, supposedly there's a contract on the building with a real estate developer currently, so it's off the market for transit anyway.
They're waiting on another Portillo's to arrive.
Yeah, right.
So, and what is it I heard? Portillo's looked at that site. I got this secondhand, but didn't like the fact that they had all the Ameren electronics. I don't know why that would bother them so badly. It seems to me you could put up some kind of facade that would cover that. Yeah. But anyway, they didn't like that, and so that's why they moved to where they are now, across the street. And that'll be open soon, so we'll stay tuned for that. You have people taking the bus to Portillo's.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. It'll be I think you may find some real need for service over there because we've had just looking at that thing that there could be traffic in there that they're not maybe ready for, but we'll find out. Well, we wish for the best on that. Yeah. But we'll keep an eye on it. When the buses are running, and I'm thinking this is a wintertime thing. They run through almost any snow or problem. I mean, it would take a major problem to stop the buses.
Yeah.
So that's another incentive for people.
Oh yeah.
I mean, if you can, there's people who don't like to drive in the winter, and the kind of weather we've had this spring, we can still talk about winter. Because it was in case you didn't notice it, there was snow in your car this morning, or at your bus stop, depending on your outlook. But that's another incentive that you can use. What do you think of when? And I'm telling you what I was supposed to have been doing when I was there, marketing. What do you see of the things that you would market for CityLink in this town?
Yeah, I guess
Is it very targeted? So you're looking at the folks that are seniors. You're looking at the folks that are in neighborhoods that aren't served well by cars.
Right. And if you're on a bus route or close to it, you know, like you say, you can leave your car at home, hop on a bus, get downtown relatively easy.
That's right.
Or to Northwoods, out to even the western section of town. There's some routes that you can catch out there pretty easy too. So we hit all of the grocery stores on all of our bus routes except for 2. So,
and that's a good point, because obviously that's been an issue with the closing of the 2 Kroger stores recently.
Right.
That both, you know, one was in Madison Park, the other one on Wisconsin in the East Bluff. Now there's got to be good ridership areas right there,
right,
where those Krogers were.
Yeah, both
represent shopping centers that now are missing probably their anchors in each case. What about that? When I hear about the grocery thing, and I just had somebody send me an email the other day about it, they said, "Oh, you know, that's one solution, but the problem is, and this isn't anything you have control over because it's just what it is, that if you went shopping and you had 2 bags of groceries, you're now on the bus, you know, again, depending on your own ability to secure those bags or whatever that you got in them, that could be a problem for you.
Yeah.
I mean, and it could be a problem for the guy in the seat next to you, too, because if a can of soup rolls under his foot, he goes, you know, right over the top. I mean, that's the I guess the downside of that whole thing. Yeah. But if you're only needing a small amount, or you can, you know, pick it up later or something like that, then it might work for you.
Yeah.
The idea of the resistance to the bus, I think that's time honored. I mean, I don't care where you go, and I think it comes from this. People just don't have enough information about it, because I know when I was involved with the transit district, there was great resistance to where we would locate that transit center, which finally, of course, is where it is in the downtown. But that wasn't an easy sell. Right. And the city, I think, tried to help, but the city was at the mercy of somebody who comes to a meeting and says, no, you can't put that there because I'll have all this smoke and I'll have, people asking for change and, you know, it's whatever that you want to imagine. Oh. But the smoke issue has really changed.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
What's the deal on the buses now?
Yeah, the emissions on these new buses, the air they take in, and by the time it goes out the exhaust, it's cleaner than when it went in. So basically, we've got 53 air fresheners running around the city, cleaning
There's
up
a marketing
the air.
pitch right there.
Yeah,
53 air fresheners.
Yeah.
Well, and yet, this was unfortunately when the fleet was old. Mm-hmm. You know, you'd get behind one of these hay burners, and it would just, you know, the car behind would get the brunt of it, and it would be a case of, oh boy, you know, I don't want to deal with that. Yeah. What about now the one thing that, and I'm remembering bits and pieces here of the past, so bear with me as I throw this scattergun of a memory at you. We had these trolley replicas at one time. I think the last one was shipped out probably just before you arrived. Yeah. Because we did a story on it and it went auction or something. Is that something that's I guess what I'm getting to is a downtown circulator. You've probably heard of this. Yeah. I think various interests in the downtown have brought it up, I think, with the growth of the warehouse district. Yeah. It's been brought up. Where does that fit into your plans?
My personal plans or into the greater Peoria?
When you're not on your bike, you know, and you're running around down there.
Yeah. Personally, I love the trolleys and the downtown circulators, the things you can get on and off, you know, go to different places and move around. And I was approached about that a little bit ago, being a couple months ago. And so, yeah, I'll have to see if there's interest with the board and the rest of the group.
The challenge with that, I mean, it's probably a challenge for you. I don't know how the finances work on that. Is it a route, or do you do it as a special service, or how do you do it from the matter of bookkeeping?
Yeah, we'd have to make it into a route and with stops. I'd do that versus a demand service where somebody'd call and like a taxi cab service type, put it on a route and just circulate downtown and just kind of.
Would you have to have a fare?
You wouldn't have to, you know.
Yeah, that could be
Sure.
handled otherwise.
Right.
Because I think what I've heard of these meetings, and again, these are not transit people talking.
Right.
These are, hey, we need a bus here, and they're not always thinking of in terms of, I get the idea that you've seen it in some other city, and it's very nice, and it comes around, but are you taking in all the possibilities of this town, which is the downtown for all its growth, and I'm looking at the warehouse district, is a downtown basically you can get probably anywhere in 5 minutes,
Right.
maybe less, depending on how fast you walk. And as people walk a lot faster than me,
Right.
but that means you're not going to stand there and wait 10 minutes. 10 minutes is not a long time, if somebody would say.
Yeah.
But if you can get there in 5, and that's what I think has to get through to people,
Right.
Because I don't, the millennials or whoever you were talking about, they want to walk anyway,
Yeah.
ride the bike, get out there. And if you're somebody who doesn't want to walk and will ride, how many people are there in that category? That's I think the challenge that Peoria faces in its downtown circulator thoughts, I guess you could say. But can you even do that anymore with a trolley replica? Is that because it seemed like that was from another day, another era, when you were ordering these things? I mean, could you get one?
Oh, I think you could have one manufactured, or there's a lot of agencies that have discontinued them, and so they're sitting around if you look around hard enough. But
could you get an electric one?
That would be good. Yeah, I was going to say that's probably our other next venture too, is moving to electric buses. So
well, I mean, that will really take that whole environmental issue away, or make it a big positive.
Yeah.
Electric. Who has electric buses now? I mean, are there cities you can turn to and say, "Oh, look, they have"?
Champaign, I believe, has some. I know Bloomington's getting some. Rock Island's getting some. So, yeah, all of our neighbors are getting them.
So the prices come down on those, so it's not like 10 times what a regular bus costs.
Yeah, and that's the other thing that they're telling us, that in about 2 or 3 years, you'll see a really dramatic drop in electric vehicles and the price of electric buses.
Drop in cost.
Right. Yep.
Well, I guess that's to be expected. Is the CityLink still working with the Firefly, the battery?
I'm not aware of.
Well, see, now that may be, again, that may be an old story that I haven't updated yet. But at one time we had a company here called Firefly that made these. It wasn't. I think it was technology that spun out of Caterpillar, and then they had their own startup. And it was successful to the point that the military was using it. I think at that time they wanted a better battery and Jeeps and things that they're, overseas. And then the company just kind of, I guess, had problems financially. And we haven't heard. I think it's still out there on Galena Road, but it's much smaller. And they were doing a thing. I think it was a trial or something with CityLink where some of the buses had, maybe one of the buses had a few batteries in it that apparently are a little more hardy than the regular bus. Bus battery will last how long?
They keep lasting longer.
They're making them better.
Right. Yeah. So I know at one time I'd heard 10, 12 years. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that's not too bad.
Yeah.
We're talking with Doug Roelfs, the general manager of CityLink Public Transit in Peoria, Illinois. And Doug, as far as you've mentioned the maintenance facility is one of your needs. We still like to get a north side transfer point. I mean, that help things out if you could find the right spot.
Yeah, if we get the right spot, that'd be great.
And then what about in the downtown? Maybe picking up the visibility down there, or whether it's a circulator. The one thought, and again, this may depend on the contract with East Peoria. I see people walking across the Bob Michael Bridge, which is fine. Probably a nice little stroll if you're so inclined. Not in this weather, but And there's a Walmart over there. There's stores over there. There's there's a Levy District over there. Why don't we have a shuttle or some kind of thing? I don't know if that's East Peoria should do that, or Peoria and East Peoria should get together. Who would generate that? Is that something that East Peoria has its own board, doesn't it, still?
Correct.
Yeah. So it would have to be their call if they want more service.
Right. Yeah.
I would think that would be a no-brainer for them because, not that I want to, have people think, here's East Peoria again, grabbing all the business away from Peoria. But, it is just across the river.
Right.
And it seems like, maybe some of those folks could use a ride instead of walking over that bridge.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah, we run regular service over there, so I don't know. They must be out stretching their legs.
Okay. Well, maybe I'm thinking what's needed is some little flashy, smaller conveyance going back and forth that would work.
Okay.
Well, very good. Well, Doug, anything else that you want to throw our way about what's coming up or encourage people to ride the bus? Because I think sometimes if you haven't ridden the bus in Peoria, you're missing out because it's a great system. And I'm not saying that just because I worked there 20 years ago, but because you got good people. And I think it's the right size town for a kind of a friendly, and I know I'm being, sounds like Frank Capra here making a movie. But, I mean, what do you think? How does that fit in your mind?
Yeah, I think it is. One of the new projects, hopefully will get turned out this summer, is we're going to have AVLs on the buses.
What's that?
So we'll have
What's an AVL?
automatic vehicle locations.
Whoa.
So that way people can pull up on their smartphone, find out exactly where their bus is. So I think one of your drawbacks on ridership is, well, how do I know when it's going to be or where it's going to be? This way you can pull it up on your smartphone. You know it's going to be there
that's
in
great.
10 seconds. You can run outside.
And when do you look for that?
The RFP is going to go out, I was hoping a year ago, so we're getting close that it's a couple months away now. But
something that might be available this year.
Yeah, hopefully in the fall, maybe.
Okay.
It'll probably be fall, late winter before we get it up and running, but yeah.
Yeah, and that's another thing because I'll throw out one more thing, and that the challenge that, again, this is something that I think your folks, your marketing folks are already looking at, and that's trying to generate more ridership from Bradley.
Right.
But, if you ever tried to park on the Bradley campus, if there's a student who doesn't have a car, he's in a tiny minority because it sure looks like there are a lot of cars up there. But, obviously there are going to be some people that are going to need the bus.
Right.
But getting them on is always a challenge because, you're kind of insulated on the hilltop and, where you're going, you need that information, you need that incentive.
Yeah.
Your AVL, is that right?
Yep.
Might be just the trick
Right.
because Lord knows if you can get it in a smartphone, that's the secret to success today, I think. I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll find out. Well, Doug, we enjoy having you here. We need to have you come back maybe when there's, maybe you get the north side location landed or the new AVLs come into play, and we'll let people know about it.
All right. Sounds great.
All right. Well, I want to thank Matt Dayhoff's been at the controls today, as he often is. And I don't know why I'm laughing. I mean, he's always at the controls. But this is Steve Tarter, and we'll see you next time on Tarter Sauce.